When most people open up Premiere Pro to color grade their footage, they might have no idea what they're actually looking at. The wrong panels might be open, the right tools might be buried somewhere in a menu that they've never clicked, and they might have no real sense of what's even available to them. In this video, I'm going to fix that for you. I'm going to show you exactly how to set up Premiere Pro so that every tool that you need to color grade correctly is right in front of you every single time. So without further ado, let's dive into Premiere Pro. So let's first start out by making sure we're editing in the correct workspace. There are many ways to navigate the workspaces inside of Premiere Pro. And look, maybe I do things a little bit non-normal, if you will. I do things a little bit strangely, but I only edit in the Essentials tab. I cut in the Essentials tab. I color grade in the Essentials tab. I do all my audio inside of the Essentials tab as well, and I'll show you exactly why. So if we make our way over into Premiere Pro and we come up to the top right-hand corner, you can see I have this little label here labeled Essentials, and then next to it, I can click on Workspaces, and then it can show me all of the different workspaces that are available to us. And if we have a look here, there is a workspace for editing and coloring and effects and audio, so on and so forth. So why on earth would I choose to do everything only in the Essentials tab? Well, I like to keep my edits as simple as possible. I like to not overcomplicate things, and I like to not get lost inside of the process. I also like to make sure that I know where everything is all of the time. I'm someone that is a massive creature of habit, so when I'm editing, if I know that my Lumetri color panel is over there and my effects panel is over there, and so on and so forth, everything stays in the same spot all the time, I can work way quicker, versus if I were to open the coloring panel, for example, everything moves around and changes. So for me, I like to only edit inside of the Essentials tab, and for this video, we are going to be customizing the Essentials tab as well. By all means, approach this how you wish, but for me, the way I work, only editing in the Essentials tab works the best for me, and it might work the best for you as well. Oh, and by the way, don't worry, you can do everything inside of the Essentials tab that you need to, especially when it comes to color grading. You don't need to be in the dedicated coloring space. So now that we're inside the Essentials tab, let's get all of our color grading tools up and running. If we have a look here, you can see that I have my project files over here on the left-hand side, and that's pretty much the only difference my layout is going to have to yours at the moment. And that's because I have my clip in here, and then I also have a folder as well. But everything else should be looking somewhat similar, but we're about to change that. So the first thing we need to do is open up Lumetri Color. Now to do that, what we can do, we've got two options. We can either come over to Window, and then we can scroll down here to Lumetri Color, and we can enable it. But if for some reason, and by the way, to close panels, all you've got to do is click on that little 3-bar line thing there and hit Close Panel. For some reason, if you cannot find Lumetri Color, you can just come to Help and then type in Lumetri Color, click it, and then it will enable it for you. So the first thing we want to do is now done. We've enabled Lumetri Color, but we also want to make sure that we enable Lumetri Scopes, which is just under Lumetri Color in the Windows section, or if you just type in Lumetri inside the Help section, it will be there for you to open up as well. Now, these are two completely different tools. The Lumetri Scopes gives us an overview of exactly how our clip is looking and reacting to our coloring, and the Lumetri Color tab specifically is where we're going to be making all of our adjustments. So if we come back to our project here, and now we drop this first clip onto our timeline. So now if we come back to the Lumetri Scopes, you will see that we have now got something here. Now, you might not be seeing exactly what I am seeing, but that's okay. What we want to do is right click on where it is gray, and then we can decide what Lumetri Scopes we're looking at. So we can either be looking at the histogram, the parade, or the waveform, or the vector scope, or two at once. So if I also enable waveform like we have there, and if I make this a little bit bigger, no, okay, for some reason, there we go. Now the waveform is up. So these are the two tools that we are going to be using the most while we're color grading, the waveform and the vector scope. The waveform is going to give us an overall idea of exactly what is in our clip, how contrasty our clip is, and if we have pushed anything too far or not enough. And then our vector scope is going to also allow us to do a lot of things, but the thing I use it for the most is checking skin tones, which is obviously super important when you're color grading any footage of people. Now, we'll dive into those in just a minute, but before we do, let's make our way over to the Lumetri color panel that we opened up before. before. And you will see now, if I have a look here, we've got basic correction, creative, curves, color wheels and match, HSL secondary, and vignette tools all available to us. And as long as our clip is selected here, if I come over here and then I want to boost the exposure, for example, you will see our clip gets brighter. And also if we have a look at our waveform over here, you will also see that all of our information just moved up, which is super cool. So now we have our Lumetri color panel open and our Lumetri Scopes panel open. We can now color grade our footage. Let me break both of them down for you. Let's first start off with Lumetri color. Like I mentioned before, this is where we're going to be making all of the adjustments to our clips. And inside the basic panel is where we're going to be making all of the foundational adjustments and where we're also going to be applying our correction LUT. If you're shooting in log profiles, you are going to want to make sure that you're correcting your footage before you try to adjust any colors. So what do I mean by a correction LUT? If I come up here to the input LUT section inside of the basic correction panel right here, I click here and then hit custom. I can then open up my log to Rec 709 because I would say this footage here is quite well exposed, so I don't need to use my under or overexposed LUT. I can then hit open and instantly our footage goes from this sort of washed out, very plain, flat looking image to an image that looks way more true to life and has a lot more depth. Now, we have seen a bit of a change on our waveform on the left-hand side as well, but don't worry, we'll get to that in just a minute. And then the idea inside of the basic panel is we can come down here and make any further adjustments that we need. So once we've corrected our footage, like we've already done, we can then see colors way easier, which makes adjusting white balance far easier as well. So I would say I probably shot this with a little bit of a colder white balance. So I'm going to just grab our temperature slider and warm this shot up just a little bit. I would also say our shot is on the dark side, just a touch. So we might increase the exposure a little bit there. And then we also might just reduce the shadows a touch as well to add a little bit of contrast. Overall, this is where you're going to set the foundation of your grade. If you want to learn exactly how to color grade your footage from scratch, you can check out this video right here that I made exactly on how to do that without using any LUTs. So that's definitely worth checking out if you're just getting started with color grading. Anyway, that's pretty much the basic panel wrapped up. Then we dive into the creative panel. This is where we apply our look LUT. So once we have corrected our footage and made sure that the contrast is back and the colors are looking accurate and true to life, we can then apply a look on top of our footage as well. So for example here, I could open up the drop-down menu, press custom, and now instead of applying a correction LUT, we are applying a grading LUT, which means for this shot here, we might just apply the clean grading LUT to our clip, which just enhances things a little bit more and looks really nice. And then we also have the choice here to adjust the intensity of that LUT. So if things were a little bit too intense or not intense enough, we can either decrease or increase the intensity. For this shot specifically, we might actually increase the intensity to about 150. And then if I just toggle our grade on and off, which is something I strongly recommend you do all the time, I can just come up to the FX button right here, hit off and back on. And as you can see, within a matter of a few clicks, we have really transformed this clip, which is really cool. And the reason I suggest checking it before and after all the time is to make sure that you haven't pushed or pulled anything way too far and now things look otherworldly. So anyway, that is our creative sort of panel wrapped up. There are a few other adjustments that we can make here, but we're not going to spend too much time on it today. We then have our curves, which is where we can adjust our RGB curve and then our red, green, and blue curves individually as well. This is really powerful for pushing and pulling different colors into different areas of your shot, and then also adjusting the contrast and overall look, feel, and tone of your image as well. Along with our RGB curves, we also have hue saturation curves, we have hue versus hue curves, we have hue versus luma, luma versus saturation, and saturation versus saturation curves as well. Once again, I'm not going to spend all that much time on these sliders purely because that is not this video. I just want to make sure that you get set up the right way for color grading. This is where we can make the adjustments, by the way, to the hues of our colors, the luminance of our colors, and the saturation of our colors as well. And then making our way into color wheels and match. This is where we can push and pull different colors into different parts of our image as well, just in a different way. So for example, if we wanted some blues in the shadows, we could come down here and move blues into the shadows, and so on and so forth for the midtones and the highlights as well. HSL secondary is where we can get a lot more specific about what we are and aren't color grading. We can choose different luminance values, different hue values, and different saturation values, isolate them, and then make the following adjustments to them. We can either denoise or blur them, or we can push and pull a color into those areas, or we can also change the temperature, tint, contrast, sharpening, and saturation of those areas that we choose as well. And then last but not least, we have the vignette sliders, which is where we can control the vignette on our shot. So if we wanted to make the corners of our image a little darker, we could reduce it, or if we wanted to make them brighter, we could increase it as well. For this shot, we might just reduce it for now. And that is pretty much the Lumetri color panel speed ran through. I know I'm not diving into crazy detail here. However, if you do want to check out my complete color grading workflow, once again, you can go ahead and check out this video here. And by the way, if you liked the look of my LUTs on this footage, I know I haven't showed you all that much of them, or if you just want to go check them out to see what they're about to speed up your color grading workflow like crazy, you can go ahead down to the first link in the description and pick those up. So now the Lumetri color panel is out of the way, let's make our way back over to the scopes. So like I mentioned before, we've got the waveform here on the right, and then we've got the vector scope here on the left. Now the waveform here, for me, I use this to make sure that my exposure is perfect, because this is, for me, the best use case of this tool. I'm sure there are other great use cases as well. This is just how I try to implement it into my workflow, sort of the best and easiest way. So if we have a look at this waveform, you can see that we've got this huge spread of different colors and values all over the place. But let me simplify it for you like crazy. The way I interpret this is we have 100 on the left, and then we've got all the way down to 0 on the left bottom corner as well. So we then have this massive spread of information between 100 and 0, and this is representing the exposure values of our shot. So the more information we have closer to 0, the more dark areas of our shot that we'll have, and the more information we have closer to 100, the more brighter parts of our image we will have. For example, if we open up the basic correction again and just crank up the exposure so things get really bright, you can see almost all of our information just shoots straight up to 100, and obviously our image doesn't look too great here. And the opposite will happen if I drop the exposure. You can now see we've pretty much got nothing above 20. So let's reset that, but increase it a little bit. I think it was sitting at about there. That looks pretty right to me. And the idea here is to make sure that I have a good spread of information between about 90 and 10. If I go above 90 or below 10, I start to get really, really dark parts of my image into my shot that can almost look black. They won't be pure black. Pure black will be either touching 0 and pure white will be touching 100. We want to try and avoid that as much as possible, as it can lead to some very, I guess, average looking clips. Don't get me wrong, if you have like a really beautiful backlit subject and you need to lean into a really bright, sort of frame, then go for it. Maybe having information that touches 100 on the waveform is perfectly fine. But for a vast majority of clips, we do not want things touching 100 or 0. But we do want a really good spread between 100 and 0, because the bigger the spread, the more contrast we have in our shot. For example here, if I go ahead and drop the contrast, you'll see things sort of get squished in. And if I go ahead and increase the contrast, you can see things get spread out. So the more contrast we have, usually the better, especially when you're starting off with a clip that looks like this and is super flat. But once you have corrected your image, you don't really need to add all that much contrast back into your shot if either you did it correctly manually or you're using the right LUTs. Overall, for this shot, I would say we have more than enough contrast in it. It looks true to life, and we have a really good spread, I would say between 70 and 80, and then all the way down to between 20 and 10. I like the way this shot is looking. It looks true to life, and then I check it on the waveform. I make sure that we've got enough contrast, and that ticks the box. For now, let's close the waveform so we can see our vector scope up nice and big, because there is one very important use case for the vector scope in my workflow. Once again, people are going to use all these tools in different ways. This is just how I use it the most. So if we direct our attention over to the vector scope, you'll see we've got yellow, red, magenta, blue, cyan, and green values. And then we've got this sort of like, I don't know, bit of light coming from the center. And then we also have this one line that goes between yellow and red. And this is the ideal skin tone line, is to use this line to make sure your skin tones are as accurate as possible. The only issue is, at the moment, this set of information, this little light poof from the middle of the center, is showing us our entire shot. So it's not giving us an accurate reading of only our skin tones. So how do we fix that? So what we're going to do is come down to the bottom left-hand corner, and we are going to select the rectangle mask tool. We're then going to zoom in on my beautiful wife, Amanda here, and select only her skin. The idea is to make sure that we are getting a good range of bright and dark areas. So as you can see here, we've got darker skin sort of here, and then where the light is hitting Amanda, we've got brighter skin up here as well. Perfect. Now what we want to do is make our way over to Effect Controls, which, by the way, a little bonus for you, if you will. You always want to make sure that you have Effect Controls open as well. So if you don't have Effect Controls open, you can come up to Help and just type in Effect Controls, just like that, and make sure it is ticked just there, and then you will have Effect Controls in your workspace. So we've got one unassigned mask here. It's a rectangle mask, and what we want to do is drag this all the way down to opacity, just like that, and then all of a sudden, all we can see is only Amanda's bright and dark skin. So now if we make our way back to Lumetri Scopes, you'll see we've got a whole load less information on our vector scope. And now you can see we only really have information straight over the skin tone line, which is perfect. So what would this look like if we didn't have information over the skin tone line? Well, let's grab the temperature slider, which is one of the most key tools you can use to set the skin tone of your subject. And let's move this all the way over to blue. And as you can see, it's a very subtle, small amount, but you can now see all of the information has shot over to the blue side. And then if we did the opposite and crank this all the way over to orange, you can see that we have a more accurate skin tone, but it's leaning over to the yellow side a little bit more, and it's also way further away from the middle point, indicating that it's much more saturated. If we then cranked up the tint slider, you can see all of that information moving over to the red side. And if we reduce it over to the green side, you can now see it's way more close to the yellow side. So what we're going to do is just reset both of these sliders. And then you can see here that we've just got a little bit of information, but it's right over the skin tone line, which is great. But like we had before, we're just going to warm this up a little bit. And we can probably continue warming that up just a touch and maybe increasing the tint as well. And now if we come back over to Effect Controls, we remove this mask just like that, and then we zoom all the way back out. We have got perfect skin tones for Amanda. Now I know I kind of went off on a tangent there with the skin tones, but that pretty much wraps up today's video. I hope now you can go into Premiere Pro and have everything available to you that you need, while also completely understanding how all the tools and scopes work. Once again, I know I didn't dive too much into the Lumetri color tool, but like I've mentioned, I think twice already in this video, go ahead and check out this video right here, which is my full color grading workflow breakdown. Anyway, guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. Also, just to let you know, if you want to speed up the entire color grading workflow, head down to the first link in the description and pick up my cinematic LUTs. And if you want to continue learning about color grading and video editing, you can check out this video right here, and I'll see you over there.